That was a snippet from Microsoft's new research this week, their audio-driven talking faces research. We'll cover that and so much more in this week's Salt AI video newsletter, where I try and cover what's new in AI, specifically things relevant to node-based platforms like Salt and ComfyUI. As usual, this week we had a ton of new releases. Maybe the most anticipated one was Meta releasing their new Llama 3 language model, something the community's been looking forward to for months. But we're also going to take a look at how language models are actually being used today in industry, new generative AI releases like Stable Diffusion 3 being accessible, and some bonus robotics news, which is my favorite if you stick around to the end. Kicking us off, I wanted to continue to pull on a thread that we started last week. Companies interested in investing in AI doing so in Japan. Last week we talked about how they passed a law saying that you can use copyrighted or non-copyrighted data to train your AI models, and we're seeing Oracle being the next candidate taking advantage of that, committing to spending over $8 billion in creating data centers in Japan. Moving along quickly to maybe the most anticipated news of the week, Meta released their Llama 3 language models and their new platform, Meta.ai. They released a smaller model that's 8 billion parameters and a larger 7 billion parameter model. Both perform extremely well, with their smaller model dramatically outperforming any open source model of similar size, and their larger model outperforming even some of the best closed source models. If we take a look at the chatbot leaderboard that we looked at last week, which is a place where humans can actually vote on which responses they like the best, we can see that the new Llama 3 model actually is the highest ranked open model by a long shot, outperforming even some of the older versions of GPT-4. Another notable new arrival here is Google's Gemini 1.5 Pro model, which is doing extremely well, but still not quite dethroning the king GPT-4, who stays at the top spot. If you're interested in trying out Llama 3, you can go to meta.ai and ask it anything that comes to mind, or click on one of the suggestions, and you'll see just how quickly Llama 3 responds and the quality of its response. One thing that flew a little bit under the radar is they did include real-time image generation, a feature you definitely don't see everywhere. I could ask Meta to imagine a Van Gogh painting of Paris for my trip, and I could see it appear right in front of my eyes. So fun. Another big component of their release is that they included a lot of technical details on how they train the model. They called out their training set being 7 times larger than the one they used for Llama 2, information about their tokenizer, the trust and safety tools they include, and they talk about their context length. But what's amazing about these open source releases is though they only claimed about an 8,000 token context length, or you can pass in about 8,000 words for it to understand, open source researchers were able to quickly push it to 16,000 or even 32,000 tokens without degrading performance by implementing their own strategies to do so. This is just one showcase of the power of open source. Another is the fact that there's already been over 1,000 Llama 3 model variants that were created on Hugging Face in a week. A few days ago, Clem, the CEO of Hugging Face, showed a screenshot with 700 models created, but today that number has doubled and there are over 1,500 models with Llama 3 in them. Because it's open source, people could quickly create factories to train new ones, so you can do it with one click, and some legendary platforms like Answer.ai have written up their own training guides. So it's really easy to get started. Not to be outdone, Apple and Microsoft both also released models this week. Apple released their OpenELM model and the tool that they use to train it, called Cornet. You'll notice these models are much smaller. Llama's small model was 8 billion parameters, and Apple's models range from only 270 million up to 3 billion. One reason why they may be focused on smaller models is they actually want to run or train these models directly on Apple devices. Microsoft is taking a similar approach with their Phi 3 model, and they even call it out in their title, a highly capable language model locally on your phone. Phi 3 is a 3.8 billion parameter model that's small enough to be ran on your phone that outperforms some of the Mistral models and GPT 3.5. But the innovation here, according to Microsoft, all lies entirely in the dataset they used for training. They made a heavily filtered web data dataset and synthetic data in order to get a very top performing model out of this. This builds on top of the first paper they released for Phi 1 called Textbooks Are All You Need, where they showed that selecting textbook quality data from the web resulted in outsized performance. This is aligned with some claims we've seen from other researchers, showing that the it in their AI models is really just the data set. And that model behavior at the end of the day is likely determined by your data set, and everything else is really just the cherry on top. With all these new language models being released, you might be wondering, what can we use these for? Well, let's dig into that for a second. Moderna just announced a partnership with OpenAI where they're using GPTs for almost everything. So far already, Moderna employees have made over 750 unique tailored versions of OpenAI's ChatGPT that do anything from selecting the optimal dose for clinical trials to helping draft responses to questions from regulators. Dose optimization they call out as a huge challenge that can actually kill products in clinical trial stage. And answering questions for regulators was a weeks-long process that can now happen in minutes. On top of that, they're using GPTs to help predict the structure of new enzymes. And seeing Moderna and OpenAI hop on weekly strategy calls, I'm sure that they will continue to plan future initiatives that push the envelope on what's possible. Simon Willison, a well-known software engineer known for co-creating Django, summarized his talk on what we can use language models for right now, highlighting AI assistant SQL or dataset querying, enriching that data, scraping it from the internet, and structured data extraction. It can't do everything. He called out that it tried and failed to analyze handwritten campaign finance documents, but these are just some examples of what's possible. We also saw research from Shanghai's Laboratory of Data Science doubling down on web scraping with their autocrawler research that shows that language models can actually understand the web if the system is well defined. And JP Morgan's research called Flowmind showing that they're looking into using language models to automatically generate workflows to solve these problems. Speaking of generating workflows and agents, Yohei Nakajima, who's the creator of Baby AGI, one of the most viral agent projects, actually had a great presentation on the future of autonomous agents and what they could do. We'll dive into that really quick. First, he started talking about that there are 40 plus agent-related GitHub projects. Most are under a year old, and they're starting to get a whole lot of interest or stars on. He calls out that we're going towards robots and virtual agents. They're very similar, but robots are constrained in physical space. He did call out an important pattern to note. Just like any other new tech that's being introduced, we start by rapid experimentation before we actually define best practices, and that's where we are right now with autonomous agents. The rapid experimentation phase. In his mind, we have three types of agents. We can have handcrafted ones, specialized ones, or general agents. And which agent you need depends on the type of task you're looking at solving. As far as breaking down tasks, you can think of two axes: how frequently they occur and how important the task is. The very important, very frequent tasks likely will call for a handcrafted agent, while the less important, very infrequent tasks likely could be solved by general agents. That's in part because you can handcraft solutions for the valuable tasks, which tend to be the important and frequent ones, and those also will have the largest market size versus the least important, least frequent ones likely have a smaller market size. Now, as far as how enterprises are thinking about integrating these agents, he calls out a few different options. One, having AI assist humans. Two, having them review human output. And then three, once you can do those first two, then you can actually have AI do the work and have people review that work. This seems to track with what Moderna is doing and what we just talked about with OpenAI. Something interesting, Yohei did recently conduct a survey on Twitter asking if people wanted one agent that could do anything or multiple specialized agents. And overwhelmingly, people only want one agent, but they don't trust one agent to be good at everything. So what that means is they likely actually want one agent that can communicate with a whole bunch of other agents that each have unique context. Coming towards the end here, he called out a lot of challenges that are left to go. Technical, societal, political, and ethical ones, but did call out just how important graphs and a visual interface, just like SALT and ComfyUI, is to this endeavor. Graphs can help visualize context as well as actions that occur and make it easier for people to collaborate on these systems. This is a big reason why at SALT we're investing in creating agents and have a big release coming soon for agents in ComfyUI. In summary, let's keep building. Now let's go back to what we talked about at the start. Microsoft's VASA 1 audio-driven talking faces research has made it possible for people to take just a face and some audio and create talking heads.
So, sometimes nothing happens and sometimes everything happens all at once.
It's not just a black box either. They have control over the gaze direction, different head distances, and what kind of emotions the avatar has. And like we saw at the start, it's good at singing too.
You never tell me that you love me.
Microsoft's not the only people pursuing this kind of research. Research from Shanghai Tech and the University of Hong Kong are pushing in a similar direction with media to face. Here they're focused more on the facial movements related to speaking.
Not enough. Introducing media to face, an approach to generating neural personalized facial animation.
And you can see how maybe taking a face like this and then putting content on top of it could lead to a much better result as well. Just different approaches for a similar problem. Stability AI finally launched Stable Diffusion 3 via API, so you can pay to have access to some of the best image generation capabilities possible so far, including text generation. Now, it's not exactly what the open source community was looking for with released model weights, but they did mention that in the future, they're hoping to release their model weights available with their Stability AI membership. For those that don't know, Stability AI membership is a membership that allows you to use their models for commercial purposes if you pay for it. It's free for personal use, and for some professionals, you can pay $20 a month for it, though there are restrictions here, and everybody else will need to reach out to their team for custom pricing in order to be able to use it commercially. I'm interested to see how the community reacts to this one. In the past, we've seen models released with a similar approach not get built on as much because it's not true open source, and the full community can't upgrade to this new model, so people tend to stay on the ones that are more permissively licensed. We'll see what happens this time. Adobe, meanwhile, announced their new Firefly Image 3 model, which can be used to actually create images from scratch, expand content, and more. And they've integrated it across Adobe apps. You can use it in Photoshop, Adobe Express, Illustrator, and in InDesign in various ways. Now, one surprising release that also got a lot of attention this week is the virtual try-on model from Korea's Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, and Omnius AI. They make it really easy to take a subject, any awesome piece of clothing, and get them to be your model. And as you can see, Twitter had a whole lot of fun with this release. As far as getting these things actually in the ComfyUI, the community is quick on the draw, creating workflows to use Stable Diffusion 3 via API directly in Comfy, as well as Llama 3 being integrated already for prompt maker options and more. I know the Salt AI team's been working on some big releases that can use this and other language models for agents, so keep an eye on that in the coming week or so. Lastly, Matteo has continued to push forward his interpolation and IP adapter research, and we can see that that is continuing to push boundaries, in this case, creating some of the most realistic, cohesive animations that we've seen to date. Awesome job, Matteo. Now, finishing up this week, talking about some of my favorite types of research from my favorite robotics lab, the Robotics System Lab at ETH Zurich. Their research is focused on autonomous navigation over kilometers for wheeled-legged robots. They conducted large-scale urban navigation, having autonomous kilometer-scale navigation missions that were conducted in Zurich, Switzerland, and in Spain. The way that it works is they scan the environment with some scanner, turn it into a point cloud, taking about 90 minutes, then they create a human-designed graph for a mission overview, but the robot takes it from there. It can plan detours, navigate narrow spaces, and go over complex obstacles, all remaining safe around humans. It's pretty quick.
Oh.
Can go up steps, even if they're pretty large, all by itself. And come down them. Tables are no match either. Grassy hills, even if they're steep, and stairs that might appear, can also be traversed by this robot. There's not much that can stand between this robot and getting to where it wants to be. And that's all I have for this week. I'm trying new things every week to make sure that I can keep you up to date in the best way possible. If you have feedback on the format, please follow up with a comment so I can continue to improve. Otherwise, I hope to see you next week. Bye.